pretty surprising afternoon out of a Coach McDonald defense, because yes, they were playing hurt. They were playing without a number of starters. That was true for the Bucs as well. And that defense made Baker Mayfield look like Tom Brady in his prime, Joe Montana in his prime. He couldn't miss. Kudos to him. He's a good quarterback, and he made some great plays. But wow, it went the right. You feel like when you put up 35 points as an offense, you should probably walk away with a W most of the time.
Yeah, well, I think the other thing is you always talk about complimentary football. Sunny day in Seattle, and one of the things that ends up happening. Listen, man, I played defense in college. Defense is just a lot harder when it comes to like what you have to do, the effort that you have to give, and ultimately, what they had the ball one time in the first quarter. Seattle did. They had one drive in the first quarter. I don't know how many plays, 3 or 4 plays, and that was it. And so I think they probably ended up with 3 or 4 total possessions in the first half. And when you start to think about a game being 12 possessions, and all of a sudden you have it for what, 3 or 4 legitimate possessions in the first half, man, what that does to your defense and the overall wear and tear that it puts on your defense is really tough for a defense to play with the kind of effort that you have to play for the entirety of a game. When I worked at ESPN, Herm Edwards was still coaching, and he came out and started working at ESPN. And he used to say this all the time when he had those legitimate big time defenses for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, with Brooks, and they had Warren Sapp, and they had Booker McFarland, and they had a bunch of guys, John Lynch, on that defense. They were really, really good. And he would say 63 plays. That's the delineating line for us as a defense. After 63 plays, the history of our defense is we will give up yardage exponentially more yardage play after play after play after about 63 because of the effort that it requires. So, some of the defensive struggles, and I'm not trying to make excuses, but sometimes the defensive struggles come because the offense just didn't. I mean, they weren't very good in the first half.
Yeah, I felt bad for Sam Darnold as it turned out. I mean, he had a great game. I think, Mark, there was only like 10 incompletions in this entire game, and then 1 sack. And that was kind of the big thing. And Bob mentioned the defense, and I think you have to put it on them, giving up 38 points and getting 1 sack. So, yeah, it was. But I thought this Josh Grizzard kid, is that how you say his name? The offensive coordinator? Yeah. I mean, he just had Baker Mayfield just looked like he was like orchestrating. He just flip here, pass there. I mean, he just such a great operator, and it's just interesting seeing these guys, both of them, guys that at one point just couldn't figure out their way in the NFL, and now all of a sudden, they're having these resurgent careers. I thought it was a battle of 2 guys at quarterback that really exemplify what that's all about.
Yeah, coaching matters, right? And we've been around this game for a long time. There's a lot of really bad coaches. And, Carolina had both of those guys in their building, both Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield, and decided neither of them could play. And so, it just goes to show you how organizations are run, and some organizations just not as good as others, and all that kind of stuff. And, we've talked about Sam Darnold choosing San Francisco over having an opportunity to start somewhere else just because he wanted to actually learn, from Kyle Shanahan. So I think all those things are really cool factors that are going into this thing. Baker Mayfield is absolutely been unbelievable all season long. The guy has been great. I've watched a bunch of his stuff. And you're right, their ability to pick you apart, their ability to find kind of those matchups, and and then it's all their guys, and then all of a sudden, it's Cade Otton that's killing you. Down the seam and on the overs and everything else. So they've got a lot of talent. There's no question about it, and he has played exceptional football. So there's no shame. Like I look at Tampa, and I think because they play in my division, the NFC South, we think that they're not very good. But here's the point. I don't call Tampa games. I call the crappy teams in the South. So like they're a really good team. Actually, I'm calling your guys' game this weekend in Jacksonville. That should be a great matchup between Seattle and Jacksonville, to what I think are really good football teams.
Yeah, it's going to be. I'll be curious to get your take after that game and see how Darnold performs. But I've been a skeptic coming into the season because I just was like, I'm not sure, is he the guy we saw last year or the guy from the previous 6? What version are we getting? And it's been a slow build through each game and a little chipping away at the skepticism each week. And then this game kind of sold me, even though the end came on an interception. It was. I don't put it all on him because he was just about to get cracked. The pass rush got there quickly. Ball bounces off a player's helmet. It was unfortunate, but I mean, he threw for 341 yards, 4 touchdowns, 28 of 34. He was throwing BBs out there, man. He looked really good. So I'm curious to this point what your take is on what you've seen, and then after this game, I'm sure after you watch the rest of the Bucs game, you might have a different opinion. But what's your take on Darnold to this point?
I've really liked him. You're putting a new offense in with a new coordinator, and I understand that it's from the same family that he was in with Kevin O'Connell with Minnesota. It's the same family, the Kubiak family, if you will, the McVay family. But Kubiak is more of a 2 tight ends, slot, getting 2 wide receiver sets and all that kind of stuff. So a little bit different in the way you structure your offense. I thought they did a great job, looking at Smith and Jigba or in Cooper Cup and finding their one-on-ones, and then Sam, recognizing who had the one-on-one and to get it to those guys on the slants or on the just little hitches and all that kind of stuff, keep drives going. I thought that was exceptional for them. And then, in that first half, I mean, you miss a field goal, right? You missed a field goal attempt of 44 yards. That's never a good thing, obviously, which would, I think, tied it up at 3-3 maybe at that point. And then every time you had a big run, or Walker gets a big run and gets called back, then all of a sudden they have, Walker gets a little shovel pass and they get a legal man downfield, and so like those things kind of starting drives over and getting those penalties, those things are oftentimes hard to overcome. And to be able to kind of weather those storms and come back out in the second half and just put up numbers. And I've looked at all the highlights from the second half. So I've seen the touchdown passes. I've seen, the what they were doing, some of the big plays and stuff. But yeah, I thought he was exceptional. In those, looking at that, like I said, looking at the highlight package from that second half.
Ohio State right now has a couple of receivers, Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith, that have combined for 10 touchdowns already, and just these ridiculous 18, 15-yard average per catch. But you look at the 2 guys in this game, JSN and Igbuka, both from Ohio State. But you also got Marvin Harrison, and we saw a week ago, Terry McLaurin, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson. All these guys, I mean, Ohio State is unbelievable, the receivers that they've put in this league.
Yeah, it's funny. I was doing the Raiders game, and I was talking to Chip Kelly, and we were just talking about the difference of college, and how the NFL is so situational. Everything's situational. He goes, Ohio State, man, we never had third downs because we got on first down, we got 8 yards. He said, and this was one of the funniest things I've ever heard. He goes, we were 9-0 on signing day every year.
Wow.
We had so much more talent than everybody else. We're 9-0 on signing day. Yeah. And so then it's just a matter of, all right, now, we got a couple of tough games. We got to play Michigan. It's unbelievable. And it's one of the reasons that, you see these guys come out of college and they just don't, when they get in the NFL, and they just don't pan out. And I was talking about on the broadcast because there's a Michigan kid, Kenneth Grant, and he's getting shoved around, and he's a big physical kid, and he's a great athlete. And he was the 13th overall pick. And I mean, they're just double teaming him and washing him into linebackers. And it's week in and week out. And I think one of the things that always happens, and I always felt this way about my career, is young defensive linemen coming out of college, especially in big programs like that, they never develop. because they can just physically dominate everybody they play against. They're men and they're playing against boys every weekend. And there may be one game a year where they're actually challenged. And so they never develop as a pass rusher. They never develop as a secondary guy. They never develop. They don't have to because they just physically go in there like, I mean, it's like Donkey Kong, they grab a dude and they toss him like a barrel and then they make a tackle. And you get in the NFL and everybody plays pro football. Like I loved it when a young guy wanted to try to run me over. I'm like, there is nobody on the planet stronger than me. There just isn't. So run into me. I will eat your lunch, please. And that's what they would do. And so it's really interesting watching, guys trying to transition into the National Football League. And Ibuka is a kid from right Tacoma who he's what a phenomenal young man, a phenomenal young player that guy is.
Yeah, that school definitely produces receivers. Quarterbacks is a different story. They go 9-0 on signing day, and they got these stud college quarterbacks that it just doesn't seem to translate at the pro level for Ohio State. But hey, I'm curious. In your opinion, now there are no undefeated teams. Is there a dominant team though? Do you still look at the Bills as being a dominant team and the Eagles as being a dominant team, or do you feel like there's more parity?
Well, I think the Bills are still a really good team. I think the Eagles are still a really good team. But I mean, it's any given Sunday. It's so close, and I think one of the things that ends up happening, especially as we get further and further away from, I don't know, like things that are important, like practice, good backup players, things that we don't really care about anymore because it's all about money. Um, like teams, like I said this before I called the New England game 2 weeks ago. They had 35 missed tackles in 3 games. Um, they had 5 turnovers in their third game of the season against Pittsburgh. Um, they were one of the worst teams in the league as far as penalties are concerned. I think they were 29th or 30th in penalties. And I was like, if they just quit shooting themselves in the foot, they're a wild card playoff team. That's how good I think they are. And especially when you look at Mike Vrabel. And I'm telling you, you look at any team in the National Football League, like the Miami Dolphins, the game I called. Miami Dolphins, they've got all kinds, even without Tyreek Hill, man, they can run. They are so fast. They are so athletic. They couldn't block their way out of a wet paper bag. And defensively, they can't stop anybody. You can't win the line of scrimmage. And if you don't win the line of scrimmage in the National Football League, you cannot win games consistently. I don't care if you got Joe Burrow playing quarterback. By the way, he's injured again. And coming into this season, they missed the playoffs the last 2 years. So we can sit there and talk about, hey, how many great speedy wide receivers do we have, or how good is our quarterback and all this stuff. If you can't block people and you can't stop people from blocking you, you will not win in the National Football League. And New England, one thing I know about Mike Vrabel, man, his team's going to play physical. They're going to be big and strong on the line of scrimmage, and they are. And it's always funny to me because I'm watching Will Campbell first play the game, just pile drive a dude into the ground and just plant him like he was planted, like put dirt over him, and he's going to sprout eventually. and all I heard coming in through draft is, well, his arms are short. His arms are short. I don't care if he has Tyrannosaurus arms. He is just whipping people's butts. Like it doesn't. The things that we do as evaluators, the things we do at the combine to talk us out of guys that are on film just play really well, is absolutely mind-boggling to me.
Hey, Mark, real quick, what's a college that you think puts out consistently pretty good offensive linemen? Who are a couple of them that, because you're right. I mean, it just seems like there's a dearth of talent offensive line-wise, but what's a school that like cranks out good linemen like Ohio State does receivers?
Yeah, I mean, we used to call Idaho Guard U. It was Jerry Kramer, myself, Mike Iupati. I mean, we just were cranking out great guards in the NFL for many, many years. Ohio State's always put out some good players.
What about Alabama?
I think that
Yeah.
I see Alabama. to me has these just giant physical dudes that aren't like they just dominate you because they're bigger and stronger than you, but they don't. I don't think technique wise, there've been a lot of those guys that have come in and played really well. Wisconsin back in the day used to put a lot together, but I really do think when it comes to playing offensive line, and you've got to really just study the film and you got to look at a guy's feet, like how tied together this guy's feet are. I said this a couple of weeks ago on a broadcast. Your hands are independent contractors, but your feet work in a union, and they have to be tied together. They have to be so tied together. And you watch dudes that just come off the ball and can snap their hips and get through, kind of go from a low to high plane and create leverage. Those are the guys that can play. And I don't think it's one school in particular. Notre Dame there for a while was putting a lot of good players in the league. And I think a lot of that has to do with who's coaching. Well, who's your O-line coach, and how good is that guy at developing players and getting players to play, that position the right way.
Mark, as always, great stuff.
Thanks, Dave.
We'll do it again next week.
Sounds good, man. Be good.
There
Take
he
care,
is,
guys.
Mark Schlereth, everybody. We'll see you.